Hello, everybody. Welcome into our latest live broadcast. It's Friday, the 12th of July, 2024. I'm your host, CareyHolzman, and today we're going to look at the new case, well, fairly new case, sent to us a couple months ago for a review. And this is the K2 from, I want to make sure I got the name right over here. This is from Musetex. Now, we've looked at some Musetex cases in the past. And our friend Luke Greenia actually has one of those who's actually using it day to day, and he can tell you how he feels about it. On the Musetex cases we'd reviewed before, we purchased those, and we're just evaluating them because they seemed very, very aggressively priced. And we got to see where some of the price cutting measures were taken, which really put the Musetex design not good and not bad. It kind of rode right down the middle. Now, Musetex has since come out with some new designs. This is called the K2. And I'm hoping that this will take them above the middle from where we were before. So they weren't bad, but they weren't great. And I'm hopeful and optimistic that they're moving more into the great status. I'm hoping it's not more of the same, although if it is, it still puts it right down the middle. And the delay on the build was that what case manufacturers, especially the smaller companies in general, don't seem to understand is when they offer to send a case in for a review, we have to purchase a motherboard, CPU, cooler, RAM, storage, power supply. Plus, we have to make this time in the schedule, all in exchange, for whatever this case sells for, somewhere around $80 case. And they're like, hey, we sent you a case, where's our review? And it's like, hey, hold on a minute. These aren't commercials, these are reviews. So we want to make sure that, especially as we move forward with the smaller manufacturers, who I want to give airtime to, quite frankly. Sometimes they have a gross misunderstanding of the difference between a review and a commercial. And Musetex, after they sent us the case, were pretty enthusiastic about the review. Unfortunately, we did not have the budget at that time. Quite frankly, we still don't have the budget to afford to buy all new parts for this. So instead, I went through some of the other pre-prepared motherboards or motherboards that had been used in previous builds that have since been disassembled, and wanted to find something that would be on par of the same level of the case. In other words, if we have a very expensive case and we want to put a very expensive and modern motherboard in it, if what we're looking at is more of a budget case, which I don't know, I'm not sure, but based on the price, it looks like a budget case for this design, then what I've got here is the best of my batch, which is a 10850K. This might have been in the robot's foot originally. However, it had a liquid cooler on it, and I don't really see any way to put a liquid cooler in this without removing some of the 6 pre-installed fans. And so this is why I don't want to review a case without building in it, because the problem becomes not being able to foresee any installation problems based on imagination. You have to actually build in it. I don't like to make assumptions. And so because of that, I had to postpone this. As a result, when we look at Amazon, it looks like they're sold out already, but I don't know if they've stopped making it or if it's just a temporary out of stock situation. So let's take a look at the Amazon page here right quick and see. Actually, now that I think about it, let's start at the Musetex website and the way that they promote this case. Let's jump over there first, and then we'll check Amazon. It looks like it's $100 for this case. Now, when you consider, bring the site up here, when you consider the design of the case and other cases similar to this, this case is a bit cheaper. However, I don't know that it's otherwise equivalent to the more expensive cases. We're going to find out. You can see it's the K2 Musetex ATX, full ATX motherboard. with 6 PWM ARGB fans pre-installed. And they mentioned the 270-degree full view, which you can clearly see the front and the side. And they've got a number of pictures here that we can look at. We've got a little video. And I'm not sure why these aren't coming. There we go. 2 USB-Cs and a Type-C. That's good to see. I like that. We've got a reset button. A lot of cases don't come with reset buttons anymore, so I like that too. We're off to a really good start. I've done no preparation. These videos are live and unrehearsed, so you get a real, genuine, and authentic reaction from me. If there's surprises or things that are unexpected, if things don't go the way I think they should, based on my 30-plus years of experience in the industry, you're going to see it live as it happens. And we'll learn it together. Looks like they've got a 10% off here, so that brings the case down to about $90. And we've got all of the features laid out here. Hopefully we'll have better cable management than we had on the video from the other day from the other case manufacturer. And yeah, as far as like putting a liquid cooler in, we would have to take some of these fans out to make room for the radiator fans, because these fans are all pre-installed, 3 across the top, 2 along the side, and 1 in the back. And so I'd like to keep those fans in. It's a shame to buy something and then just end up putting it in a trash can. Also, the added cost of the cooler. You know, you're looking at the price of a whole nother case just to buy a cooler. So ideally, we want to build in this using an air cooler of some kind, whether or not it's RGB, but we definitely want to use an air cooler. Otherwise, we're throwing away money. And if you're going to throw away money, why not just buy a case that has what you need, rather than spending money on more than you need and throwing some of it away? And when I say throwing it away, you know, I mean like putting it on a shelf somewhere that you might use one day, or keeping those extra fans you pull out as spare replacements. If I were you, I'd just buy the right case for your needs today with whatever plans you have to upgrade that you can foresee during the time of purchase. So we don't have a crystal ball. Our tastes can change, and also the specifications required with the component installation can change. It hasn't really, but it could, right? So if we look at Amazon, it looks like they are sold out over here. But I have to imagine that it'll be back in stock. I don't see any indication that this is discontinued. They did a pretty heavy marketing campaign when they sent it to us, and I think that's what caused them to sell out. We've got 4.6 stars out of 5. That's really, really good. 78% of the people who have purchased this case are very, very happy with it. I like to see that. If I thought this case was going to be bad, I would not be making the video on it. So I'm going in with the benefit of the doubt. Now, if you don't like the black case and you want to go with white, they offer it in white, also still sold out. However, it does appear that the case is available here on the site. And this looks like, I'm not sure, pay with PayPal, quantity, chat. I'm not sure which color this one is, if this is the black one or the white one. It doesn't seem to specify. And I don't know if that comes in later during the purchase, if it asks you. I'm not sure which is which here. You might have to, if it says pay with PayPal, more payment option, case type, color, here we go. So apparently we just have a link for this black case. I don't know if there's a separate link for the white version. I'll have Mara look into that. But in the meantime, that appears to be the only place to get it between Amazon and the manufacturer. I don't recommend other websites, generally speaking, but I'll leave that to your discretion if you decide you want one of these. So let's go back over to camera 1 here. Here we go. And hello to all the members in the chat. Thank you guys so much for being supporters of the channel. And for everyone watching, welcome in. Welcome to another Friday video brought to you by our friends in green, our friends at Acronis, and our friends at RoboForm and VIP CDK Deals. Without these folks, well, there'd either be no videos or far fewer videos. And it's because of them that we're available to make this video today. So a deepest sense of gratitude and appreciation to all of our supporters who make this happen, who give us the ability to prioritize making videos over prioritizing expanding my computer repair business, because I can only do one or the other. I can't do them both at the same time. So I've been prioritizing the YouTube videos over getting new clients. Many of my clients have, some have passed, some have retired. Many of my clients are much older. And as they move on, generally in the past, what I would do is take on another client, you know, start knocking on doors. I don't want to get too many clients. So I haven't been doing that because I want to prioritize the YouTube videos. But YouTube is more or less stopped paying. So, I mean, the amount they pay is so little. It doesn't, if all I am is a talking head and I'm not, you know, having product, that's just free money. It's still not enough to compensate my time, but nonetheless, these kind of videos do cost more. So in any event, the videos remain free, but to participate, interact with me, that's a benefit of membership, because without the membership, there wouldn't be a video to even watch. So, all right. So with that, thank you to Jeremy Kramer with a $10 super chat. He says, "Happy Friday, Carey. Are all the Carey related intro songs written by you or someone else? If by you, it's an awesome job." Those songs are written by Suno. You'll see the word Suno in the bottom right corner. Suno.com is a website that enables you to create music, whether you want to write the lyrics and tell it what kind of music you want, or a blend of music. I want orchestral rap EDM. It'll mix them together. Or you can tell Suno to write a song about a topic. So I want to write a song about a brown squirrel named Nutty who appears on my show. Like, be very specific, and it will create the lyrics. And then you can also tell it to pick the music of its choice, or that you want the music to be country or country rock or rock, dance, or K-pop, whatever you want it to be. You can mix and match all different kinds of styles of music, and the AI will automatically generate 2 versions of the song. And you can do 5 songs per day. You get 50 credits for free. And if you want more than that, or you want to be able to commercialize it, so you'll notice all the monetization's turned off on those Suno videos. If you want to commercialize it, it's very inexpensive per month to do that. But anyway, not an advertisement for them. I just have a lot of fun with it. It's very enjoyable. If you haven't tried Suno, it's a lot of fun. All right, there's our friend Luke Greenia joining us. Says hello. Doman 2000 saying hello. Hello to, Live Windows Training with Doug Betts joins us. Right on. Welcome in to Doug. Doug says Tamara, her thumbnail for today's video looks great. Yeah, especially when she got last minute notice. Yeah, she did a great job. Also with the links, Mara provides all of the background administration that goes on with the YouTube channel, which is massively helpful to me. It's the least favorite part of making YouTube videos that she's now taking on. Doug says, hello, like what you're trying to do to improve the chat room, especially having the chat more open during the pre-show than clamping down. Yeah, thank you. It's all an experiment. We're hoping this solves the problems of disruption, unnecessary distraction, and unwanted individuals from coming in. Also, because of the members' importance to the foundation of the very continuing retention of this channel, I want to make sure that my attention is primarily focused on their questions and their comments, because they're sacrificing something for me. I want to sacrifice in return for them. So it feels wrong that somebody supports the channel, and then during a public video, their comment or their question is just buried in chaos of noise of the chat room just flying by. And then people who may be trying to pull a prank, I can't tell. So maybe I see their little prank question, or maybe they're just new here and they don't realize the question they've asked we've already answered. So that form of, sort of entitlement, I'm sort of done with it. I've tried and tried to show kindness, thinking that, I would get kindness in return. Unfortunately, it's resulted in just more of an egging on for those individuals. So this is about the best, most fair way I can think to do it. And I realize there's going to be some collateral damage from folks who've been watching for free and participating for free, who can no longer participate, who haven't done anything wrong. In fact, the vast majority haven't done anything wrong. It's just a little teeny tiny percentage, but it's enough to disrupt the entire flow of the video. So we're hoping this resolves it. And I do feel it gives the membership more value. And the entitlement is just that. The fact that these videos are even available to watch for free should be enough. And if it isn't, then it's the same as not having any videos, as far as I can see. So it's kind of one or the other. I don't know any other way to take care of it, but we're hoping that this will stick, and we certainly have enough members now that it's not like we're not going to have a busy chat room. We should have a pretty good interaction with the individuals in the chat, with everybody I know being sincere and supportive. So those are the folks I want to make sure have my attention. The other folks, they might be, they may not be. It's really hard to tell sometimes. So in this way, I can be sure, and we don't deal with disruptions and the change of the tone on these live, unscripted, and unrehearsed videos, which I find is, they can go sideways simply because, I've taken some bait. And I know nobody here is going to bait me. So that's why we're doing it, for anybody who doesn't understand. But at least we're still able to keep going, and the content is still available for people to watch free worldwide. If you'd love to interact with us, we'd love to have you. Just become a member and support the channel. That also helps us to create more content. All right, so thank you to Matthew Barnes, who renews his membership, now a member for 26 months. Look at that. Good afternoon, Carey and chat. Hope everyone is doing well. Thank you, Matthew. Paul Gray says, hello, good day. Speaking of which, Mitch is in Melbourne, Australia right now. Hope he's having a good time. David Graham saying hello. There's Joe Martin saying hello. There's Bebo with a $5 super chat. Thanks, Bebo. Richard Paul Montier says hello, as does Mark Leibowitz. And Thomas Backenstow saying hello, along with Matthew MacArthur. Thank you, guys. Mark Gaines, joining us from Northern Ireland, says hello, as well as Gregory Haffen. Shamin Keshvira is joining us from Sweden, saying hello. Wesley L95, now a member for 25 months. Right on. Thank you, Wesley. Captain Blinsky joins us, says hello. Dave Stetzel saying hello in the chat room. Welcome in, Dave. 3D Everything renews membership, now a member for 26 months. Right on. He says, here I am, a good Friday to all of you. Thank you, 3D Everything. That is 26 months, man. That's awesome. Both of you. That's the first two 26-month memberships. Those guys must have joined right on day one. Nick Capri contributes €5. Says, hey, Carey and Mara. And chat. Welcome in, Nick. Good to see you, my friend. Thing One says hello. David Graham with a $2 super chat. Barry Klein, another member at 26 months, right on. He says, I just realized today is my 26-month anniversary. Can it have been that long already? I know. Yeah. Believe me, I know. It's a good thing and a bad thing. Avery Ramsdorff saying hello. Andy Kane saying hello. Gregory Haffen says, Newegg has these cases at $199.99. Ooh. That's marked up pretty good. Probably because of the shipping, I'll bet. They probably include free shipping. And, I can tell you from firsthand experience, these things are expensive. So my guess is that's probably coming from a third-party shipper, not from Newegg directly, because Newegg makes special deals with the shippers. So I haven't clicked on the link, but it sounds like that's a third-party seller who's got to pay shipping like the rest of us mortals. Gary Tatum has been a member now for 26 months. Look at that. That's 4 individuals in the chat right now at a 26-month level. That's crazy. I love it. Thank you guys so much. William Denton contributes $10 in Super Chat. Thank you, William. Paul Gray with a $20 Australian contribution. Cheers, Paul. Mark Gaines with a 20-pound contribution. Cheers to Mark joining us. I guess it's Slancha. Probably saying it wrong. From Northern Ireland. He says, Carey, I bought a Dell Latitude 5285 all-in-one tablet. It came with Windows 11. I want to downgrade it to Windows 10 as it's got a Core i5 7th gen in it. Is it possible and easy to do? Ooh, well, I will tell you that easy is a relative term. For one person, something could be easy, and for somebody else, massively difficult. Now, I've not worked on one of the all-in-one tablets before. I've never had one in my hands. In general, I mean, here's what I would do. I've got a video that shows you how to back up the drivers. I would go ahead and back those drivers up, put them onto a USB flash drive. I would create a Windows 10 flash drive, Windows 10 installation, which I've also got a video that shows you how to do. And then I would have it boot from the flash drive, wipe out all the partitions that are on the Dell, just the same way you see me do on all other videos here. Do the install the same way you see me doing all of the videos here. Once the install's done, go ahead and restore your drivers back in the device manager that's needed. Do your Windows updates. You should be good to go, I would think. If it has a 7th gen, it probably never had Windows 11, isn't compatible with Windows 11, and it must have had Windows 10. If that's the case, Windows 10 should go back on it no differently than any other laptop or desktop. There shouldn't be anything special. I would do that exactly the same way, regardless if it was a tablet, as you're describing. It's really not a tablet, though, is it? It's really kind of it's a laptop. If it's a tablet, you can't change the operating system in most cases. Tablets are usually Android or Chrome-based. So when you say 2-in-1, that usually means it's a tablet and a laptop. So that's the good thing, is you can change that. Frankie B, there's our friend Frankie joining us from New York. Says hello. Welcome in, Frankie. Frankie's been a very generous supporter here, as well as our friend Oystein in Norway, and our very good friend Peter Laycock out of Scotland. It's about 9 hours difference, I think, between Phoenix time and Scotland time. So I know Peter usually watches these videos much later. When I'm asleep, he's watching videos, and when I'm making videos, he's asleep. So Peter, if you're watching, a shout out to you, my friend. We call him Buster here. So I always like to take a minute anytime I see a contribution to say thank you to those generous enough to make the sacrifice. Most viewers don't, and that's okay for whatever reason, but it's because of those supporters that we have videos. That's where we're at right now with YouTube monetization. That's where it's going. So that's why it's so important to me, and I hope that everybody who enjoys the videos for free also appreciates the contributions from these members that make it possible for you to enjoy the free content. So Matthew MacArthur, now a member for 26 months. That's number 5, isn't it? Samuel Kowalski, now a member for 7 months. You guys rock. All right, so let's get to work. What we have here, the K2 case from Musetex. If you hear hesitation in my voice, it's because I'm confusing 2 case manufacturers. And of the 2, I won't mention the other one. If you've been watching the channel, you probably know. Of the 2, I like Musetex better. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. But I don't want to mistakenly call Musetex by the other one's name. Because these videos are live and unscripted, here's hoping I don't do it throughout the show. I'm hesitating to make sure I got the name right. The case, I mean, first of all, what I'm hoping for is we don't end up with a hot dog build. All right, that's where you have a beautiful case that's just very limited in design and perhaps not of the best quality. It's like a hot dog. It looks great and it tastes great, but you do not want to see how it's made. All right, we don't want a hot dog case. And the other manufacturer that I was referring to, that's all they make are hot dog cases. As somebody in business where what I'm building is a reflection of my reputation and my quality, I don't want that representing me. I want decent or excellent quality, nothing below decent. All right. I'm not super finicky where it's got to be the best of the best. I can take good enough. What I can't take is this should be unboxed and immediately placed into the toilet. So, all right, let's let's keep moving. There's our friend Gregory Howard joining us. And Paul Gray renews membership, now a member for 5 months. Paul, 1960s, now a member for 25 months. He says, time flies when you're having fun. Agreed. There's Chris Garrett saying hello. Barry Klein says, every time I say Musetex, he hears Mucinex. The commercials from years ago are causing flashbacks. I may not even be pronouncing it right. It might be Musetex. Maybe I should change how I say it. I'm just pronouncing it in the way an American would pronounce it. But given it's a proper name, it could be pronounced, I don't know, literally any name. If Sade can spell her name S-A-D-E and say that Sade, I suppose Musetex or Musetex could be music. I don't know. I really don't know how they intend for that to be pronounced. Jose Lopez with a $2 super chat says hello. Twice. Thank you, Jose. But Paul 1961 with a $20 Canadian super chat contribution. Thank you, Paul. So this build, I'm sure we have a video of me building the Z490 Aorus Elite motherboard, and this thing is heavy. Why is it so heavy? Something heavy in the box? Box is what's heavy. Oh. These are parts. In this box are the parts to the robot's foot case, the Cougar Conquer 2. I'm going to need those. When I picked up the box with the board, I thought it was just the board that was heavy, but yeah, I better make sure I get those robot's foot parts out because that has to be rebuilt again. We upgraded it from the 10850 to a 11th or 12th gen, maybe even 13th. Now we've got a 14900K waiting to go in there using one of the MSI Meg boards. So this is the original board, I believe, that went into the robot's foot back at Studio A years ago. And it's been, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just robot's foot is such an expensive and elite case. I always like to have the latest and greatest put in it, but I never use it. And that's why it just kind of sits in a constant state of upgrading. And no sooner than I get it upgraded, it's time to upgrade it again. And then I figure, well, I'll find another home for the previous parts that were flagship parts at the time. The 10850K was just a hair under the 900K, and it was $100 less for 100 megahertz slower. I mean, come on. So you'd be a fool to, in my opinion, to buy the 900K for $100 more just to get 100 megahertz more performance, which you'd never notice as a human being. Most people would never see any difference in that. But most people would see a difference of $100. But, all right, let's open it up, the case that is, and let's see what we got going on. Oh, you know what? Let's not do that yet. This board hasn't been powered on in a long time. It's going to need a heatsink. As I mentioned, it had a liquid cooler, but while this case will accept a liquid cooler, it means we're going to have to remove fans. I don't want to remove any fans. I don't see the point of buying something just to own a portion of it. I want to buy the right thing. And in this case, if you're considering this case, ultimately, of course, that's up to you to decide if you want to pull the fans out. Some people do that anyway. I like to utilize what I have. That's just sort of the MacGyver in me from growing up in the 1980s and not having any money and access to things. We had to utilize what we had. So I want to utilize all of this, right? I want to use the whole buffalo, as they would say. And I believe we don't need a liquid cooler for this. I think we can cool it with the Mugen 5. Now the Mugen 6 is out. However, the Mugen 6 is designed to be compatible with the latest Socket 1700 and AM5 chips. And while it is backwards compatible to this socket, why waste it when this is not forwards compatible? In other words, this is an older CPU with an older chip. These are going to pair together perfectly. And I'll save my Mugen 6 for a newer style of socket. So let me get this out of the way. Let's get this fired up. Probably a BIOS update. There's probably a ton of Windows updates. Just clear some space. And I've got my index card here that tells me what everything is. So let's take a quick look. Intel i9 10850K, 64 gigs of G.Skill Royal Z RAM, Gigabyte Z490 Aorus Elite, a Samsung 970 Evo Plus 2 terabyte. The power supply that's in the case were both made by Cougar, so those things don't apply. Now, what I can do, so I don't scratch up my Lazy Susan, is we'll put the motherboard box there, and then we can get a power supply. Oh, well, I suppose we need to put the heatsink on first, don't we? And then we can turn it on. So this heatsink, so just so we're clear, some people say, is that heatsink going to be good enough for the chip? And quite often the answer is, depends on how you use your computer. If you're asking, under the most extreme circumstance of intense resource usage over a long period of time, will this keep my CPU cool? I don't know, we'll find out. But under normal circumstances, where every once in a while you're using a lot of resources, but not often, and most of the time you're surfing the web, watching videos, paying bills online, streaming video, whatever, a cooler like this is probably fine, right? So your CPU may get hot momentarily and then come back down. If you're somebody who's always maxing out your CPU, I would suggest you have not bought an adequate computer for your needs. Anytime I hear about people saying that, you know, they need to overclock, that suggests to me that they have not purchased, they've underpurchased, basically. And if there's a difference between want and need. If somebody just wants to overclock, they can spend all the money and time on that frustration. It doesn't bother me one bit. If somebody needs to overclock, if it's critical, then they've underbought their computer. They should have spent more and got a higher end computer, so the need to overclock wouldn't be there. And for the record, motherboards mostly auto overclock now anyway. I think overclocking's been dead for a couple of years, and it's really a very small and shrinking niche that is probably going to go away. It'll be so into, sort of like ham radio. There's still people that use ham radio, but it's a smaller demographic now, at least here in the US, than it's ever been since the invention of ham radio. And I think as this older generation dies out and the younger generation gets older, they don't even know what ham radio is, mostly. So times change. So that's what I think. It's what I've assessed based on the current. But what I hear from customers, and then what I see in marketing and what's selling, that's the gist I'm taking from it. Could be completely wrong. All right, so you've seen me with the unboxing and installation of a Mugen 5 before, so we're not going to get into too much. I'm going to just try and get it done quickly for once. These are all of our accessories. I did choose a black edition. I still have the silver, but because the case is black, the glass is smoke, the motherboard is black. Seemed like a pretty simple decision. But if I was going to use a tower cooler, I'd use a black one. Charles Purdy contributes $10 in super chat. Thank you, Charles. Got our fan, put that over there, and then I'll just take these empty boxes and get them all right back in. However, this was... It's always more difficult to get the thing put back in the box than it was ever to take out. Just close that up and set that right over there. Documentation, of course, we've got our free, I guess it's not free, at no additional cost. We have a real magnetized Phillips #2 screwdriver, which is needed to have that length to get those screws installed, if you remember. And then in this bag, we've got multiple mounting options for both Intel and AMD CPUs. And because we're working with Intel, all of the AMD parts will go back in the bag. We'll save them. So if we ever change our mind or whoever gets the computer decides to go AMD, they can still reuse the cooler. Now, that's very, very unusual. For the most part, most people can simply throw the extra parts into the trash or recycle bin. You are likely never going to reuse the cooler if you're like most people. But I'll leave that to your discretion. We've got the fan buckles here. I always call these fan hangers, but they're calling them buckles. But I guess that's actually a more appropriate name. These are the fan buckles. And they give you 2 sets, so you can add an additional fan to the other side of the cooler, which I think is a ridiculous waste of time and money and noise and dust. But hey, to each their own. And then we've got, a bunch of mounting hardware here. And we've got some brackets. 1 set of brackets for Intel, 1 set of brackets for AMD. The AMD brackets look like parentheses, and the Intel brackets are completely straight. That's an easy way to tell them apart without having to look at any documentation. Now, we have an extra set of brackets here. So these ones that look like parentheses, tell you right now, those are AMD, and since we're not building with AMD, we'll just put those back in the bag. And then when it comes to the other 2 sets of straight sockets, 1 set has multiple holes in it, and the other set has a single hole at each end. So these are for the change from the Intel. Hold on, I got to look at the documentation to remember all these numbers off the top of my head. But Intel changed the socket type with 10th gen. So the original socket type was 1151 or 1150, 1155, 1156. We call that 115X, where the X could be a 1, a 0, a 5, or 6. They're all the same. Also, the socket 1200 is also the same. It wasn't until socket 1700, which I believe was 12th gen, that these brackets that only have the single hole on each side and one in the middle, these are needed for socket 1700. This is not a socket 1700. This is a 10th gen, and that means we're going to be using the traditional brackets that you've seen me use the most of on this channel over the course of the years. As I built a lot of 7th gen, 8th gen, 9th gen, and 10th gen, and 11th gen, we use these. From 12th gen forward, I hope I'm remembering this right. You can feel free to correct me if I've got it wrong. But I believe it was 12th gen that socket 1700 was the standard. And then 13th and 14th used that same socket. 15th gen will change the socket again. It'll be over 1800. The number keeps getting bigger. They add more pins and more channels, more lanes to the chip. Okay. Zach Bischoff joins us, says hello. There's Ghetto Fortnite saying hello. All right. Now, out of the box, I don't know. I mean, I like that Scythe has placed the standoffs into this backplate for us so we don't have to do it. But because there's 2 defined standards of the socket 1700 and the 115X socket, we might have to move these. They might have placed it in the socket 1700 position, since people buying new CPUs will be buying socket 1700 CPUs mostly. And yes, yeah, so the standoffs that are pre-installed, they need to be moved. Walk up to the camera and I'll show you. The main difference is a very small difference in width of how far apart these screws are between socket 1700 and socket 1200 and 115X. So what we do is we remove these plastic caps, and you'll see that this standoff, or this screw, has two positions it can fit in. You see the way that's carved out? And the screw has a square nut on the bottom of it. So that'll lock it in place either at the far edge of this plate, and that's too far. So we need to go towards the center, as close as we can get to the middle. So of the two positions, the best way I would describe it is one position is closest to the outside, and the other position is closer to the inside, closer to the middle. So we want that one that's closer to the middle. And you can see it only moves the screw a little tiny bit. Just that little bit. But when you multiply that times 4, it really shrinks it down. And it'll be pretty obvious. I mean, the socket 115X and 1200 backplate will not fit into a socket 1700. The holes, the screws will be too close together, and vice versa the other way around. So it's pretty easy to tell. It's not like you're going to guess or be uncertain. Not to figure out which ones I just did. Where did I leave off? It can get really confusing really quick if you're not paying complete attention to which direction I'm rotating this. But you can always kind of turn it around, look at the bottom, get an idea for which one is left to move. See the gap above the screw? Gap above the screw. Gap above the screw. No gap above the screw. That's the one I have to move. That's the last one. Then, in theory, this should just slide in very easily into the holes surrounding the socket of the CPU on the back side of the motherboard. And that's what we call our backplate. Ow. Okay. Just make sure those caps are on all the way. And then, ow, I just banged my knee. It's getting a little crowded here at Studio B. All right. Let's see. In theory, that should just fit right on there. And it does. You should not have to struggle. If you're struggling, you're doing something wrong. All right? Don't force anything when you're building a computer. That will be the main thing I can tell you, is if you're struggling with it, you're probably doing something wrong. Maybe you've got the wrong part, or you're trying to install it in the wrong place or in the wrong way. Slow down, take a breath, double check before you proceed, and don't use any brute force. Sometimes you got to push down pretty hard on the edges of the RAM to hear it click into place, but you always want to make sure that that RAM is properly lined up in the socket before you push that kind of force down on it. And sometimes the power connectors can be a little stiff. That's it. Nothing else should require any force. Don't use the force. What I'm trying to say. Let me clean the top of the CPU off. It's been a while. It's been probably sitting out collecting dust for a while. And while this is not entirely necessary, it as a nerd, and if I can speak on behalf of the nerds and the geeks, when we put our cooling on, our thermal grease, whatever you're using, liquid metal, we want to get every benefit of it possible. And so if I touch the CPU and I get the oils from my skin onto the CPU internal heat spreader, that is going to degrade the efficiency, the efficacy of the thermal material. But it's not going to degrade it by a massive amount. It'll probably be mostly unnoticeable. But we're the kind of people, when I say we, us geeks and nerds, the real ones, we don't want a speck of dust, not one speck. Even though probably isn't going to make much of any measurable difference, it also doesn't take that much more effort. So why not do the best job you possibly can. And then if you're having some heat related problems, you know for a fact it's not because you didn't clean it thoroughly, right? Because otherwise you'll have self-doubt, right? If you're of that mindset, you're going to say, well, maybe I should have wiped it clean. Carey said it wouldn't make much of a difference, so I didn't do it. But now I'm still having it. And chances are, if you then allow yourself to take it back apart, re-clean it properly, and put the thermal paste back on, you're still going to be right back to where you were. It literally makes almost no difference, unless it's extreme. So I would not want any old thermal compound on there. But I mean, you could use a paper towel and wipe it off, and you'd be fine. And if you touched it with your fingers and you got oils from your skin on it, it's probably going to be just fine. Again, the difference it'll make is primarily something that matters to extreme overclockers, where every single fraction of a degree makes a difference in how much higher of a frequency they can get. And even then, it's often temporary, where the chip does burn itself out, and they set like new world records. They're like, oh, we got 8 gigahertz out of an Intel chip. But in the smaller print further in the article, you find out that was for 6 minutes and the chip is fried. It's an expensive hobby, and it's often needing like liquid nitrogen to cool it. So, you know, if that's your thing, don't let me get in the way, but I don't have that kind of time or money. All right, so here, oh, those are our brackets. So we're done with those. We're done with those. Now I need the little fasteners here. Richard Palmentier said my Z790 DDR4 accepts 12th and 13th gen CPUs. Yeah, and 14th gen too. Okay, so we've got these little plastic standoffs, and one side has a rubber base, and you want the rubber base towards your motherboard so you don't scar up your motherboard. Also, if you turn it around the other way, it just slips on. It doesn't stay on. So with the proper end facing towards your board, it locks in. You can feel the friction when you're pressing it down. Then when we put our brackets on, we put them on so they're facing each other. And there's a bit here where it's bent up. You want that facing up and away from the board, because that is to make room for the capacitors that are underneath of it. You don't want to get closer to the capacitors. You want to get further away. Whoops. Put that in the wrong place. Should be going on the inside holes. And you're going to place these in this socket type. It goes over the retention lever that you lift up to take the CPU out. It does not go across opposite to that. It'll be parallel right over it. And the other side is symmetrical, like a mirror image, so that they face each other and they are equal. So it should look like that on a socket 1200 or 115X. And we do have close-up videos, just dedicated to showing the install if you want that level of detail. But it should be pretty obvious once you're in there. And we've got our thumb screws, and that's going to just go right on top here. We've got some additional standoffs that are used for other Intel, like socket 20XX sockets, the higher end sockets. And then we have these really long screws, and these are used on some AMD installs. So all of these we're not going to use today, and they can go back in the bag. So all of this stuff over here, minus the fan, is all going to be spare parts for other socket types if we were to ever change our motherboard out. Usually, and the reason why I say most people don't change their cooler is usually, one, they don't have the spare parts, especially if it's a pre-built, you don't get them. Two, when people pull the motherboard out, they often want to reuse it somewhere else, so they still need a cooler. Three, a lot of times the CPU they buy, depending on how many years have gone by, the cooler simply won't fit onto the newer socket style. Or four, the cooler won't be adequate for the heat generation that a higher end chip a couple of years from now is going to generate. So for all those reasons, typically, once a cooler goes on, it stays on for the life of the machine. Some people maybe upgrade from air cooler to a liquid cooler, and while others will do the opposite, but very few people upgrade from one air cooler to another. There are people who do it. I'm just telling you, it's just not a common thing. Like, let me put it to you this way. If I promoted in my business that I can change your cooler in your computer and that's all we did, I'd be out of business. There's not enough work. Not enough people would have any idea why they would want to do that. Certainly wouldn't want to spend the money unless they absolutely had to. And therefore, I'd be out of business. There'd be no service for me to offer. So. Go in there, go in there. So I save the bag, and that way this will go in the motherboard box. So the owner of the computer does have the option, if they're one of the few that wants to upgrade the cooler or move it into another system, we have all the spare parts to do that. Finally, we can apply our thermal compound. So let me grab that. Been a while since I've done this, huh? Little deja vu. Was there no thermal compound in the bottom? You know? Oh, it's right in front of me. Never mind. All right. So what I do is very different from most other channels because I'm a professional tech and not an enthusiast. And I'm held accountable and liable for what I sell to my customers. So I don't care what anybody else says, unless those other people want to take care of the warranty work for my customers. If they want to accept the liability and the blame, I'm not interested in their processes. My processes are what I'm being held accountable to. So whether or not somebody agrees or disagrees with my methods has nothing to do with my customers' happiness and my ability to sustain a business. And if somebody says that I seem obtuse or unwilling to hear the logic of why they do it their way, they're missing the whole point. Whether or not you agree with me doesn't make me right or wrong. What makes me right from my perspective is that I end up with a happy customer and I don't have to go back for any warranty work. So I do processes that I have learned over the years, over the thousands of computers I've built, learned from my mistakes, learned how to do things in a way that reduce the odds of a callback. And my processes exist for my own sustainability, and I'm simply sharing them with folks. And if they wish to dismiss them, that's their choice. I have a lot to lose. My livelihood is at stake. The happiness of my customers and whether or not I get referrals or repeat business is all based on delivering on time, on price, under budget, on budget. And ideally, the customer will never call you with a support issue in a perfect world. Because any support issues are generally, they're going to cost me money. I can't bill the customer for them. And that means because the market's so tight, I'm already making as little as I am, any support call reduces or removes the profit. It also is inconvenient for your customer. So not only is the customer upset about it, I'm upset about it too. So for that reason, I use a nitrile glove and I spread the thermal compound evenly across the entire surface of the CPU because I want to make sure that when this heatsink goes on top, that we don't have all of the thermal compound sliding to one side or the other. Some people are concerned about air bubbles, which has never been proven to make any difference because it's not an airtight system. Bubbles could get in, right? Air can get in. So what I do is I tap on the thermal compound and I make little hills and valleys. So there's still a squishing effect. That's what they're promoting. And this is why when you're watching or learning from the internet, you consider the source of who's providing the information to you. Is this somebody who read it or heard it or saw it in a video and they're just repeating it back out? Sometimes repeating it back out incorrectly because they misheard it or misunderstood it. Or is this coming from an industry professional? So that is something I'm always looking at when I see information that's making claims. Who's making the claim? Who are you? Why should I listen to you or believe you? Who are you to make that claim? Well, I'm somebody who really enjoys computers and I watch a lot of content. Not good enough. I need to know what industry you work in, how many years you've been working in that industry. Otherwise, what you're saying is just conjecture. And I will treat it as conjecture. That's fine. It doesn't mean I'm not going to listen, but it's not going to carry a whole lot of weight for me. Most of what you see on the internet is conjecture. All right, so now we can peel this protective tape off of here. And that protective tape is there to keep the surface polished and clean. So we wait until we're ready to install. You don't want to install forgetting to remove this because it's going to seriously impede your ability to transfer the heat. And you're going to have an overheating problem. And that's far worse than finger oils or dust. Way worse. And it's a very easy mistake. I've certainly done it before. I'm sure people on the channel that have been watching remember there's been at least one occasion where I did that. Probably two. But I know for sure I did it at least once. Now I set the cooler down so that this, where the little support bar comes out, is towards the ram. We want the fan on the ram side. Fan goes on the ram side. It's also going to blow the air over the I/O ports, not down or up. There are sometimes some exceptions depending on your cooler manufacturer, but more times than not, this is the proper and accepted preferential way of airflow. And the reason for that is your case will often have fans that blow air in this way, and your heatsink is going to blow the air in this way, and then your rear case fan is going to blow air this way. So all your airflow all moves one way, front to back, front to back. When you start to blow air out the top, out the bottom, you're starting to disrupt your airflow. And you think, oh, there's more fans, that's better. It's actually worse. Think of a river that flows, and it's all flowing one direction. It has a certain amount of water pressure, certain amount of can't think of the word, current. When that river hits a fork and it splits off, you start losing current, right? It doesn't have the same amount of force. It doesn't carry the same speed if you're perhaps in a boat riding the current. As you get closer to where that split is, the pressure starts going down. Well, the same happens with air. Air and water are very similar in how they flow. They're going to take the path of least resistance. And the idea is that to have an efficient airflow, you want all of the air moving in one direction. Now, that's not to say moving the air out the top and the back would be detrimental. It's just, generally speaking, either negligible, where it makes no noticeable difference, or worse. It is never, let me repeat, never better. Never. And again, consider the source of information. And the best way for you to know the truth is to simply try the experiment yourself. Do your own heat measurements with a rear fan only and a top fan only, and then both fans together. And it'll be pretty much all the same across the board, or worse when you have two fans versus one. That being said, and I'm talking about, blowing air out the top and the back versus just out the top or just out the back. Try it. Tell me what your experience is. When you see these cases that are on display and they're just filled with fans that are all lit up, that's for show. That is not for cooling. That is just for show. Sort of like people that chrome the bottom of their car and they put a mirror under it at a car show. Who's going to see that? And do you think they're going to drive that car in the rain? Probably not. That's probably a car that's designed to be looked at, not driven. If you ever go to a car show and you see one of the manufacturers of automobiles showing off concept cars, they're often not drivable. They're just showpieces, just for looks. They're not practical. They're not cheap. And quite often, they're barely even a car, by the assumption that one would use a car to move, to transport yourself. They do everything but be a car. Kind of the same thing. Now, what I'm doing is using this long screwdriver, and I'm trying to tighten the sides down more or less evenly, right? Try and bring down one side, then come on through the hole on top here, start tightening down the other side. And what we want to do is we want to try and more or less evenly tighten. It doesn't have to be precise, but we don't want to tighten one side down all the way and then tighten the other side down and have this thing sitting tilted. We can't see it with the naked eye, but it won't have a flush surface mating with the top of the CPU. And as a result, we're going to run high temps and wonder what's wrong. So to avoid that, we want to tighten these screws down more or less at the same level, just a few turns on one side, a few turns on the other. And again, it doesn't have to be precise. Okay. If you feel like, uh-oh, maybe I already tightened down one side, just go ahead and back it off a little bit. Back it off about a turn and a half. And then back off the other side a turn and a half. Or if it's only one side you've tightened, try and get it back up to around the same level. And then go ahead and then retighten them again. You don't have to take them all the way out. The idea is that we're just trying to remake that surface so that it's completely flat. So it's a very easy thing to correct. As you're tightening the screws, depending on the length of the screw, it mostly matters right at the point where it starts to get tight, where you start feeling the resistance. Whatever you do when they're loose, you know, tightening them the same doesn't really make much difference. But the idea is that as you get down closer to where it starts to, the screw starts to resist, that's where you want them both equally tightened, fairly balanced. That's the logic behind it. Anyway. David Graham says, I used your finger tape method yesterday. It worked great. Yeah, so for applying the thermal compound, you could use a piece of Scotch tape on your finger if you don't have the nitrile glove. Just put a clean piece of Scotch tape, stick it to your finger, and use the clean side, the other side, to then spread the thermal paste and then take the tape and throw it away. That's just as good. All right, our fan, this side here that's open like this is the air, where the air is coming in. And the side here that has these support brackets, that's where the air is going out. We want the air to go out this way. So this fan will go with this, where you see it's open, that's the side we're going to see. And the side with the brackets is going to go against the heatsink. Now, if we were to put a second fan on, we would put it on in the same orientation, meaning that on this side, we would see this side of the fan. And on this side of the heatsink, we'd see that side of the fan. And that ensures that we're not pushing the air from one fan into the other, negating the whole point of the heatsink. So I think a second fan is a waste of time, money, noise, and it also brings in extra dust. When the dust settles on the components, they run hotter. You can appreciate that paradox, right? So one fan is really, I think, the best overall value, efficiency, the amount of work and dust that it brings in for what it's going to cool. This is going to make a big difference. Adding a second fan may make zero difference and may have side effect negative differences apart from you spending more money and time. Now, these are generic terms in dealing with the vast majority of computer owners. I don't know you personally, and you may be one of the niche computer owners out there where a second fan would be necessary, but it's getting more and more uncommon as far as necessity goes, right? It becomes a want versus a need. Now, of course, if you want it, knock yourself out. But I'm always very conscientious of offering my customers a value and of the number of items that could potentially break that I'm going to be called for warranty. The fewer the items, the cheaper the machine, the less likely there is for something to break, and the faster I can build it so the customer can have it sooner. So understand, my perspective as a business owner is very, very different from that of an enthusiast. I keep emphasizing that because a lot of people still need that reminder, apparently. I don't know what else to do. All right, let's see how you guys are doing here in the chat. I want to tie up this fan cable right now before we put this in the case. Let's see, how do I want to do there? I want to go this way. No? That's to go this way. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of folding the cable on itself in order to reduce the amount of slack, and that will also help hide the cable. Because we have a big glass panel on the side of the case, we don't, hopefully we don't want to see this cable. This cable will be close to the top, and ideally won't be noticed. We definitely don't want to draw attention to it by having this slack cable just hanging and being in the way. So this is just an aesthetic, not a requirement. And this was something that didn't matter before cases started coming with windows. And then on the motherboard, there is a different color fan header. This one is black and it says CPU fan. The fan header plugs on only in one direction and just one way. Although I've seen people plug it in by offset by one pin, and then the system won't boot because it doesn't detect a CPU fan. They're like, I plugged everything in right. No, you didn't. In fact, nothing gets under my skin more than somebody who insists they did it right, but it doesn't work. Because the first thing that you should be assuming if it doesn't work is that you didn't do something right. So the question should be, what have I done wrong? Not insisting I did nothing wrong and it doesn't work. Not on a new build anyway. Now, sometimes you may get a bad part, but in most cases, it's because the user's overly confident they didn't do anything wrong when they did. And they want to know what can cause this problem when I didn't do anything wrong. It's an impossible question to answer if the reason it's not booting is because they did something wrong and they refuse to acknowledge that. Then you're like, I can't help you, you know? All right, so let's plug the power supply in. I hope this board still works. It's been sitting around a while, but it was a high-end board and very good performing board, and it's still going to be an excellent performing board today. CPUs haven't really gotten that much better. And aside from having an NPU, a neural processing unit for local AI processing, which has still not become, it's far from becoming ubiquitous. People really don't know what that is and don't miss it. Most people. So as far as a 10850K compared to a 14900K, it's not that much different. I mean, you can Google the difference between them and then the price between them on today's prices. And I think you'll find the 10850K is almost imperceptibly the same speed in most scenarios, depending on how you use your computer. But regardless, if you agree with that or not, it's what we have, and so that's what we're going to use. But I think this still has, 6 years of life left in it easy. All right, that is assuming it'll turn on. Let me grab my power switch, which is what I'm looking for. And let me get that plugged in right over here at our motherboard header, front port header. And then we need what? Keyboard, video, mouse, network, right? Because this will have an OS. I can't remember if this has Windows 10 or 11. Probably Windows 10. But by now, I'm comfortable enough to start installing Windows 11. I have been for some time, if you've been paying attention. And then, yeah, so keyboard and mouse, and then we should be able to make sure this boots, see if there's a BIOS update, determine if we should probably install Windows 11. It'd probably be faster than updating Windows 10 at this point anyway. And Windows 11 is the inevitable end for Windows 10, which is still more than a year away. But if I was going to sell this to somebody, I'd want them to be future-proofed as much as possible, and that means putting Windows 11 on it. Just as they would get with any other new PC you'd purchase today. Paul Gray with another contribution of 20 Australian dollars. Right on. Thank you to Paul Gray. All right, I've got my keyboard and mouse. Let me just find a USB port back here I can use. Any of them are fine. I'll use one of the black ones. They're the slower ports. Save the faster ports for flash drives and data transfers, things where speed matters. Keyboard and mouse speed doesn't matter. You're not going to type any faster. Your mouse isn't going to move any faster. Okay, finally, we need to add power. Now, this is not the power supply we're going to use in the final build. This is the power supply we're using just for testing and make sure that this motherboard is good to go into the K2 case. Otherwise, we'll be wasting a lot of time. Now, if this was a brand new set of parts, there's no reason to test it. They're going to work. If you've sourced any of your parts from a questionable source like Facebook, Marketplace, OfferUp, Craigslist, eBay, different story. But if you're buying all brand new parts, setting it up to test it like this is likely opening the opportunity to damaging your brand new parts you should build in your case. So I do this because we're making a video and I want you to see. But this is not how I build a computer normally. Just so you know. Normally with all brand new parts, they get assembled and put in the case and then it's all turned on. Doing it this way, especially if you're new at this opens up an opportunity to damage this because it's open and you're giving power to it in a way that it was never designed to run. But if I were to receive unfamiliar parts or if I was doing a computer diagnostic, I would take it out of the case and place it to diagnose it this way. Some people say you should put it up this way first to make sure it works before you put it in your case. There's no reason brand new parts won't work. So I would say the opposite is true. You're more likely to damage brand new parts because you did this. But again, I'm making a video and I'm a professional technician. There's nothing I can't fix. There's nothing money can't fix. I'm not worried about it. But if we weren't making a video right now, and if these were brand new parts, these are no longer brand new parts. This board has been sitting for a while, so I'm not certain if it's going to work. So even in this case, taking back what I just said, for this example, I would still be doing it this way. But if it was all brand new and we weren't making a video, you're just likely going to damage or open the opportunity for damage to brand new parts. So when somebody says you should do this on any new build, I couldn't disagree more. But yes, if there's parts that are not brand new or they came from a questionable source, then this is acceptable. In fact, recommended. So it's not a one-size-fits-all type situation, right? Depending on the circumstance, depends on the approach. That's all I'm trying to say. Thank you again, Paul Gray, with another $20 Australian super chat. We'll put another shrimp on the Barbie for you. But he's never heard that before. All right. The chat room's going good, going gangbusters in there. I love it. I have no idea what you guys are talking about, but I love to see the interaction and I want to keep moving forward. So I'm going to go ahead and fire this bad boy up and see what happens. Power supply is on and we've got power. The screwdriver, the thermal compound, all that can go with the cooler, right, in the spare parts. Let's go over to our HDMI input, which is right over here. And let me put myself in a corner. Because, that's where I belong. If you asked any of my teachers. And power. Okay, fan is turning. You guys can't really see it too well. Expect to see that RAM light up. There it goes. And it boots. It boots. I bet you this thing hasn't been turned on in at least 18, if not 24 months. Yeah. Okay. So I think we should just do a clean install of Windows 11. But first, I want to see if there's a BIOS update. So let's run CPU-Z. And we'll see what version of BIOS we have now. Just in case you're wondering how I do this. This is a portable application that does not require any installation. Now there is a newer version of it, but normally I'd say always use the latest, but this is an older board, so it's really not that important. And we're going to click the motherboard tab, and that's going to tell us our BIOS version is F21. So with that, we can open our browser and go to the support page for this specific motherboard. So with Google, you can just type the specific Z490 Aorus Elite. Nobody else makes an Aorus Elite Z490. So we don't have to specify the manufacturer. It's like saying, I need to know what the water pump is for an 83 Malibu. You don't have to specify Chevy if Chevy's the only one who makes a Malibu, right? It's synonymous with the manufacturer's name. So Z490 Aorus Elite. I believe that's us right there, that first link that comes from Gigabyte. And then we'll go to the support right here, not the support up here. This is generic support for Gigabyte. We want specific support for the product. And this is true of Asus, Gigabyte, MSI, and ASRock. They all do the same thing. You have two different support buttons, one above and one below. So you can get there with the above button. You've got to search for it. We shouldn't need to search for it because we're already on the product we wanted. If we go down here to BIOS, we want to see F21 somewhere in here. Yeah, so F21 was released 3 years ago. And since then, there's been an F22, an F23, and an F24. So we're going to just skip right ahead to F24, and we're going to download that. Once we have that downloaded, we're going to extract it. And now that it's extracted, we'll right-click and choose Copy. Then we're going to close everything out just to avoid any other confusion. Close everything. Next, I'm going to grab just an empty small flash drive with nothing else on it to avoid any potential confusion over what file to select to update my BIOS. Now, I've got these generically named SAM data flash drives, and they sell them in a package of 5. They're like 8 gigs each. These are great for Windows installers, memtest bootable, Acronis rescue disks, or temporary flash drive usage. They're so inexpensive. Let's see if Mara can add the link to the SAM data 8 gig. Let me just verify these are 8 gig. Yeah, these are USB 2. They're not that fast, but that's okay. That won't make any difference in a BIOS flash or memtest 86 or Acronis. Not much anyway. So the SAM data, 8 gig, there's a 5-pack. Each one is a different color. Then you don't necessarily need to label them. You know, oh, I use the red one for this and the black one for that. Or just keep them in a drawer for temporary usage. So with the flash drive plugged in, the computer should see it, and we can then paste the file we extracted onto the empty flash drive. Just right-click, paste. And so even at USB 2.0 speeds, it's such a small file, it doesn't really make much performance difference. Then we're going to restart the computer. Oh, and it was downloading updates in the background. Lucky me. So here's the thing. We don't have to wait for that. I mean, it turned out that actually went by pretty quick. I'm going to start pressing delete on the keyboard repeatedly, which should hopefully get us into the BIOS. The reason we don't have to wait for that is we're going to wipe out the drive and install Windows 11. So it doesn't matter if we corrupt the current Windows install. We're going to go to QFlash right here. Update BIOS here. You see it only sees one file. That's the file we downloaded on the flash drive. We double click it. It says, are you sure? Yes. And then you just want to leave this alone. Well, you got to press to start. And now leave your keyboard and your mouse alone. Let this do its thing. Let me get rid of camera 1 here so you get a full screen of what this BIOS update looks like. I'm kind of covering up the date and time. Don't be thrown by the date and time not being precise. The fact that the board has been off doesn't worry me. It automatically syncs the date and time as soon as you boot into Windows. So if it's off by even a couple of years, it will self-correct. The reason I don't recommend users change it themselves is they often can make it worse. I've seen users fat finger the keypad, and instead of correcting it from 2019 to 2024, they end up typing in 2724. Don't realize they've done that. They save and exit, and they start getting all kinds of Windows errors. and they're trying to diagnose software problems for something they self-created that would have fixed itself if they'd have just left it alone. So again, I'm a terrible businessman because this is all opportunities for me to charge $125 an hour to fix it. And that's a real easy fix. Those are the kind of jobs as a tech you love because your customers think you're a genius because you're in and out quickly. You just made easy money and everybody's happy, right? But I think you'd be happier if you never had to call the tech and you never had the problem. All right, let's take a look what's going on in the chat room. Bajan guy said this thing booted in less than 15 seconds. Yeah, that's why I say there's not going to be a whole lot of difference on a 14th gen versus this 10th gen. A little bit, but is it worth the difference in the amount of cost? I mean, I'll guess at the end of the day, that's your money and up to you. Marlena says she's added the link to the flash drives if you guys want to buy these. They're very inexpensive. They seem like really good quality, especially for the price. Thank you again to Charles Purdy for his super chat and Richard Palmentier for his super chat. And Gregory Howard contributed $20. He says, here's my late fee. Thanks, you guys. Is Doug Betts still in the chat room? Now the system's automatically rebooting itself. This is still all hands off. Let the system sit here. Nothing is wrong. If you interrupt it, you may disrupt the BIOS update, which could brick the motherboard, requiring you to send it in for service. I cannot emphasize enough to leave it alone if you want to be successful and have a good experience. Dwayne Blackwelder renews his membership, now a member for 20 months. Hey everyone, he says, I've been listening since the beginning, but just now saying hi. Well, welcome in. Thank you for saying hello. All right, still hands off. We're not touching anything. Give the motherboard whatever time it needs to finish completing the task. It's not the same amount of time for every board. If you've waited more than 10 minutes, something's wrong. But up until 10 minutes, I would assume everything's fine, and don't try to jump in and fix something when it's not broken, or you might break it. You likely will break it. Now you can see now that the BIOS update is finished, it's automatically booted normally back into Windows. Now Windows will continue to try to install updates in the background because I've got it plugged into our network. I'm going to go ahead and unplug it from the network because what we're going to do next is we're going to do a clean install of Windows 11. We're going to build this just like any other brand new build. It doesn't matter that it's an older build or it's got parts that are from a couple years ago. We're going to build it the same as we would build any other brand new machine. Now at this point, whatever this is doing, which is probably related to some update that happened in the background, if I'm polite and courteous to my machine, I will wait for it to finish. But my machine it works for me. I don't work for it. And we're going to reinstall our operating system anyway. So I'm going to just hit the power switch on the back of the power supply here and just cut it off because we're going to wipe everything out that's on there. So again, normally you'd be concerned about file corruption, your operating system files being damaged. That's irrelevant for what we're about to do. So Windows 11, I have my installation media. This is a faster, more expensive flash drive, and I will plug it into the faster USB port. This can make a few moments of difference in the install, especially if you're doing multiple installs a day, like somebody that does this for a living might be doing. The faster you can make it, the more you can get done, right? So what I want to do here is go back to my HDMI input, hit delete a bunch of times. That should take us back in the BIOS. Now, since we updated the BIOS, I want to reset the BIOS back to its defaults because I don't know what might have changed. So we're going to load the optimized defaults. First thing we do. Second thing I want to do is jump over to the advanced mode here. And we're going to go to boot. And we want to temporarily, because we already have an operating system. Does that even, would that be under Windows 10 or other OS? I guess it doesn't really matter. I think either way we'd be fine. Secure boot should be turned on. Yeah. I think that's all fine. So what we want to do is we want to temporarily override our boot. We don't want to permanently override it. So under save and exit, got to go this way, Carey. Save and exit. There's something called boot override. This is a temporary, not a permanent change. So normally we would be booting from the Samsung internal NVMe. But if we do that, we're going to boot into Windows 10. Now I could manually change it to always boot from the UEFI SanDisk first. But then that means every time I plug in a SanDisk flash drive, it's going to try and boot from it. So just this once, on its next reboot, I want it to prioritize the USB drive over the Windows Boot Manager. So I press enter and we'll save the configuration and reset the computer. And when this restarts now, it should load the Windows 11 installation media. And we're going to simply go through the process the same as we do on a new build, with the only difference being I need to erase the existing partitions on the Samsung NVMe drive so that it puts it back to the brand new out of the box, no partitions, no format, just like a brand new drive would be out of the box. Other than that, the installation process is the same. Now, as you can see here, it did not do as I instructed it to. I wanted it to boot to the Windows 11 installation media, and I don't know why it didn't do it, other than maybe because I made that other change. So I'm going to try this. There's a couple different ways we can do this, but I want to stubbornly repeat this process one more time because I think it saved the change, but then didn't obey the override. I think you can only do one or the other, and the BIOS doesn't tell you that. So one more time, I press delete. I go back over to save and exit, boot override to UEFI SanDisk, and you see that time it did not ask me if I wanted to save because I didn't make any changes. Our Windows logo even looks different. We've got some artifacting on the screen, which goes away on its own. That's not a good sign, but also nothing to worry about unless it doesn't go away. So we go through the same process that we always go through with any new Windows install. It doesn't matter that the machine is older. It doesn't matter that the machine has Windows 10 on it. We're going to click I don't have a product key, just like we always do. And we're going to install oh, this is a Windows 10 flash drive? I put the wrong flash drive in. Okay, so let me turn the power supply back off. Let's go back to camera one here for a second. If you've been watching this channel since 2008 or even from a few years ago, what you are witnessing is my refusal to wear my glasses. And my vision is clearly, ironically, clearly getting worse. Because I thought, what do I need my glasses for? This is a Windows 10 installer. I want the Windows 11 installer. And had I worn my glasses, I would not have made that mistake. And I'm doing everything I can to not wear them. My apologies. Let's turn the power supply back on. Motherboard back on. Start pressing delete, and we'll switch back over to our HDMI input. Yeah, you know, as I get older, my vision's only going to get worse, and there's going to come a day where I just have to have the glasses at all times. But I'm not there yet, and I'm trying to postpone that as much as possible. So bear with me in my denial. There we go. This flash drive has two bootable partitions, I think a legacy and a UEFI boot. And that should have been my first clue between the two installs. Some lessons are just a little harder to learn than others. What can I tell you? All right, so this looks good. We're going to hit next. Install now. We didn't get any video artifacting this time. I don't have a product key. Windows 11 Pro, next. Agree to the license agreement. Always, always, always choose custom install regardless. And then I'm just going to delete all the existing partitions. Now doing this permanently erases all the data on the drive. So don't do this if you haven't backed up your data. This is like putting it back to factory fresh out of the box. It's not going to have anything, not your email, not your printers, not your programs, nothing. You're wiping it back and going back in time, basically, to when the machine was brand new out of the box and it had never been turned on before. That's what we're doing here. We're resetting the hard drive so that it has no partitions and no data. It is completely wiped out. And then we hit next as we would on a new build, which would automatically out of the box, have no partitions and no programs and no data. And this way we have a consistent install process that will be the same regardless of the age of the machine or the hardware in the machine. It's always the same. And that consistency is what's going to make supporting your customers easier. If you do it one way for one customer and another way for another customer, or heck, even if your customers, quote unquote, are yourself, your friends, your family, if you're doing it differently for one person than everybody else, you're easily going to forget that after a few months and they call you asking you for help. And then you're going to struggle because you're going to say, how the heck did I set this up? Now I got to figure that out before I can go forward. So always set them up the same. And if the person you're helping doesn't like that, they can get help somewhere else, because that's going to impact you versus impacting them. So unless you're getting paid enough to deal with that, if they know better, they don't need your help. That's the way I see it. Mark Leibowitz says, Carey, I've been wearing glasses since I was 3 years old. Count your blessings. That's the thing. If I'd been wearing glasses all my life, I'd be used to them. But having never worn glasses until recently, it's very difficult for me to get used to always remember to have them with me. Because most of the time, apart from reading, and again, the reading depends on the size of the font and the lighting of the room. A lot of the reading I can do fine. So the reading I need to see is often like restaurant when the check comes, or looking at the menu. Sometimes I'm at the grocery store and I'm trying to read a label and I don't think to bring them in with me. But then I pull out my phone and I use the camera on the phone as a magnifier, which just looks stupid. I'd rather have the glasses on than use my phone as a magnifying glass. But I think there's an advantage to wearing glasses your whole life, as you're just used to it. I'll get used to it in time. Paul Gray wants to know if Mitch has dived with the whale sharks yet. I don't know when Mitch is going to do that. All I know is he just arrived in Australia yesterday, I think. Yesterday or the day before. And he arrived in Melbourne. And I don't know where the shark cage dive, what city that takes place in, because he's going to be all over Australia. And he's even going to hit New Zealand to do the bungee jump off of Harbour Bridge. But he has promised to send us some videos, and so when he gets around to doing that, I will share them with you. You can follow Mitch on Facebook. Just look for Mitch Morrison on Facebook. And if you see a photo of Melbourne, you found the right Mitch Morrison. But I do expect he will send us a video of the shark cage experience. He's got a GoPro and he intends to use it. I'd also like to see, I mean, I can't imagine he's going to film himself bungee jumping, but hopefully he'll get somebody to film it for him. And hopefully share that video with us as well. Okay, there's our install, and we'll go through our standard process here. We click yes on United States and US keyboard layout with no secondary language keyboard. I don't have internet. Continue with limited setup. This way we're not forced to create a Microsoft account. Here, I'm going to put in Forrest. Forrest is a friend of ours whose birthday is today. Happy birthday to Forrest. Because I think Forrest will be getting this machine if everything works well. We'll accept those changes. Again, everything is always the same. That's how you're going to get good at something, is through repetition and experience. So if you kind of roll your eyes at hearing me repeat the same things or show you the same things, it's as close as I can give you to actually having that experience. And believe me, I feel the same way doing it. But I also feel very confident that I'm doing it correctly the first time. And I won't have to go back and revisit any issues or oversights. That is the problem with experience, is it can get a bit tedious and boring. But I want a heart surgeon that has experience that might consider my operation routine versus somebody who's just starting and doesn't have that experience and has a lot of nerves and anxiety and uncertainty. No, thank you. That's not the heart surgeon I want. But you choose for yourself. So there's the consequence of being the one doing the work who's experienced and done it thousands of times before, which the person doing the work might feel is boring and not challenging. But the customer very much appreciates and values. It's a very different perspective. All right, so our install is done, and now I can plug the network into it. I can remove our Windows 11 installation media. We don't have to safely eject. We can if we want to, but it's not entirely necessary. And then we're going to go back to, well, this little globe right here should turn into a little computer screen, assuming our driver is installed. So we'll check our device manager. And you'll see we've got some devices here that aren't recognized. Now, before you freak out about that, just visit Windows Update. You're going to do that anyway on a new install. Some of those drivers may be automatically provided by Windows Update. The only way to know is to let Windows Update do its thing. And if we had a valid product key on Windows 10 Pro that was activated, then that will also be reassigned to this computer automatically. And once again, you need to be connected to the internet and give it a few minutes to do that. We also want to check the optional updates here, but that won't be available until our scan is done. So now let's see if there's any optional. So far it's showing none, but we do have a lot of updates missing. And this is the latest install media for Windows 11. Now you'll notice some Intel drivers down here, Realtek drivers. That may be some of those items. And we'll see once this is done if we have any undefined items in the device manager. And if so, it should be significantly reduced number of items, if there's any at all. Let me go back over to camera 1 here and we will turn, I'll put myself in a corner because I want to keep an eye on the screen while we do this. My internet here at Studio B is pathetic. So these downloads take a while. It's not the computer that's slow, it's my download. The good news at Studio C, we should have a 2.5 gig network connection versus a 30 meg, 300 meg internet connection. So 2,500 over there, 300 over here. So 300 works out to about 30 megabytes a second, and 2.5 gig works out to about 5 times that. Is that 150 megabytes per second? I probably shouldn't say anything to jinx myself, but that's how it should work over there once we get in. Every day we're a little closer. Paul1961 says, how are you able to get around the whole network thing on your Windows 11 install? Paul, there's a tool called Rufus, and I've used and talked about Rufus in the past. And what Rufus does is it enables you to take an ISO image and to burn that or record it onto a bootable flash drive or a CD, DVD media. When you tell Rufus you want to take an ISO image and record it to make a bootable flash drive in this case, it acknowledges and recognizes that the ISO image that you've selected is Windows 11. You don't have to tell it. It automatically says, oh, I know this image. This is Windows 11. It does that all by itself. Rufus is this little teeny tiny program, super teeny tiny. It's completely free and safe. And because it recognizes it, it says, would you like to disable the automatic encryption on Windows 10, Windows 11 Home? Would you like to disable the network requirement? Tell me now, and I'll make those changes to your bootable image so you don't have to deal with that anymore. If you Google that or search for it here on YouTube, a number of creators have already shown this. So I don't feel the need to go and repeat what others have done a long, long time ago. And that's how I do it. Look at me giving away all my secrets. Art Gain says, Carey, I can't see a thing without my glasses. Wait, who said that? Couldn't resist. Chris Johnson says, fun fact, bifocal lenses were invented by Benjamin Franklin. That is true. Benjamin Franklin was the Elon Musk of his day. He not only invented a lot, he negotiated the treaty between the United States and France to convince France to come help us fight the British. He invented a bunch of stuff. Bifocals are just one thing. Benjamin Franklin inventions.
According to UPenn Almanac, University of Pennsylvania, lightning rod, 1750, Franklin stove, 1742, glass harmonica, 1761. Of all my inventions, the glass harmonica has given me the greatest personal satisfaction. So wrote Franklin about the musical instrument he designed.
He's got a lot more than that. Swim fins, Benjamin Franklin. A flexible catheter, Benjamin Franklin. Of course, bifocals. A long arm extension to reach high books. He founded and co-founded America's first circulating library, the first volunteer fire department, the first liberal arts academy, the first public hospital, the first mutual insurance company. It goes on and on and on. There's a great book on Benjamin Franklin by, what's his name? If you're interested, it's a fascinating history. Benjamin Franklin biography.
According to Wikipedia, Benjamin Franklin was an American polymath, a leading writer.
Walter Isaacson, who did the Steve Jobs book and the Elon Musk book and the Wright brothers. I think he did the Wright brothers. He does a lot of research into his topics, and the books are just very well written and very eye-opening to me. Walter Isaacson's very good at what he does. I think he used to be in charge at CNN, if I'm not mistaken. And then retired and started writing these heavily researched books. I think he also did one on Thomas Jefferson. I really liked the book on Elon Musk. It was very open, very transparent. Wasn't taking sides. He's just like, you know. He also wasn't covering anything up that may not have been flattering to Elon. There was some stuff that's just not publicly known about Elon that I'm sure Elon would like that way, that I was really fascinated with. Let me change my power settings because the machine just went to sleep on me there. That's why the screen was black. Let's go ahead and change that to 3 hours. Save that. And you know, I hate this little cartoony thing down here. So I type search permission right there. Hit enter and scroll to the bottom. Change this to off. And that gets rid of that cartoon down there. And then we can go back. And while we're waiting, we can also change some of the stuff on the taskbar. I like to turn all this stuff off. And then come down to the taskbar options or tray icons and turn on the one that's off. Turn those both on, and the one that's on, Microsoft OneDrive, I turned that one off. I set it exactly opposite how Microsoft wants it. And that's downloading and installing, but we can go ahead and restart now. I mean, that was a lot of updates. And then we'll come back and check again. We'll also look at our device manager, see if it's changed at all. Nick Caffrey says, I have Windows 10. When I finally upgrade to Windows 11, will I have to use a Microsoft ID and agree to their settings? No, you do not need to use a Microsoft ID. If you're getting stuck where Microsoft, during your upgrade process, if it's demanding it, you can press the Shift and F10 key. And again, there are a number of YouTube videos that show you ways to circumvent that. But no, it should not require that at all. And if you get stuck with it, of course, you're always welcome to email me directly as a member. I'm more than happy to point you to the links, or if I need to actually rewrite it or copy and paste it in the email for you, the steps you would need. But I wouldn't worry about problems you don't have. Wait until you have an actual problem, regardless of what it is and whether or not you thought it was coming, whether or not you anticipated it. I think it's a waste of time to have anxiety and be worried about something you have no control over that may never happen. All you need to know is if you ever have a technical issue and you're a member of the channel, you can reach out and email me at any time. And I'd be more than happy to send you a link to a YouTube video or a website article, or as I mentioned, manually type in the steps I would recommend. That is a feature of membership, and I very much appreciate that you guys take advantage of it. Because when we deal with what is versus what could be is a big waste of time for me with the number of emails that I get. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen. But I can tell you that if anything should occur unexpected that you're stuck, I'm always a resource for you. And if you happen to coincidentally have that occur during a live video, our chat room is often much more knowledgeable in many subjects than I am. And they'll be more than happy to answer your question during a live video as well. We're all a community here, right? We support each other. It's just those what ifs just kill me because I can't answer. But you'll be okay no matter what. That's all you need to know. Now, let me go back over here and see if there were any optionals here. Advanced, and then, yeah, 0 available. Okay. Then, while it's downloading these other updates, let's check the device manager. Look, it took care of all of those updates for us. So no reason to panic, no reason to freak out or worry or have anxiety for something that, with patience, going through the correct process you needed to go through anyway, took care of itself. And I expect as Windows continues to evolve, we're going to see that more and more. Using and getting drivers is becoming a foreign concept to new computer users who don't understand what a driver is and why you would need to install one manually. They're so accustomed to Windows taking care of everything for them. Many people just assume that that's normal. And it's becoming normal. And this idea of having to go and get a driver is something only older people are going to do, or younger people working with old hardware are going to do, like enthusiast level folks. Your common computer user doesn't know what a driver is and wouldn't even know that they had a driver missing unless something wasn't working, like a printer. And a lot of times these days you plug a modern printer in, Windows 10 or 11 automatically recognizes that, and automatically loads the driver for the end user. They don't even know how it works. All they know is I bought my printer and I plugged it in and it should work. That's your common expectation from an end user. The complexity of what they're expecting is beyond their interest. They don't care. Just want it to work. If they have to call support, they're going to get angry. Support is going to get angry that customers taking it out on the poor guy, poor person who answered the phone. Does bypass NRO still work? Yes, it does. Patrick Manny, now a member for 26 months. Is that number 6 or 7 today for 26 months? You guys rock. Thank you, Patrick. Mark Gain says he does not see the link to the flash drive. It's in the US only. That does tend to be a bit of a hiccup for us sometimes as a worldwide broadcast. The vast majority of our viewers are in the United States. And so being in the United States, we have a United States perspective. It's not done intentionally. Some products are not available outside of the United States or in certain countries for whatever reason. But I'm sure if it's there, Mara will find it and create the link for you. But you will have to speak up and let us know. She'll do that specifically for you because you asked. We don't have many viewers in the UK to justify the added work it is to add all those other links, because we also have viewers in Canada and Australia and in Germany and in France and in Spain and Brazil and et cetera, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, Japan. So at some point you say, okay, well, we'll provide the links to the masses, whoever those are that are watching your channel. And then for anybody that specifically asks, we'll do our best, but it's quite possible the product simply doesn't exist in your country or isn't available. But most of the time we don't even look. Let me just make an adjustment here. This is bugging me. Okay. Yeah, most of the time we don't look because the amount of time it takes to locate the product, generate the link, add the link to the video notes for something that nobody's going to click on, right? But if you ask, we'll do it for you for sure, because then we know somebody's going to click on it, even if it's just one person, right? But that's why that happens, in case you were wondering. Paul Gray says the link shows here in Oz. So in Australia, he sees it. Nick Caffrey says the link is visible in Ireland. Mark Leibowitz said he was watching a retro computing channel and the content creator was trying to install a device driver for which he didn't have the drivers. Brought back memories of doing that pre-internet. Yeah, well, you know, we had to install drivers for everything. Nothing had drivers pre-installed. I mean, maybe your basic motherboard stuff, but for the most part, you added whatever you were plugging in, modems, sound cards, CD drives. Yeah, you installed drivers for all of that. And then there'd be some update that caused your CD drive to go missing, and there was a registry at it to turn off the filter, whatever this filter was. You had no idea why the filter was turned on, and it was in the registry, so it was pretty complex, and all you did was delete that command, restart the computer, and your DVD or CD drive was right back and running. Remember those days? So you can see how far Windows has evolved and come along in the sense of self-maintenance and requiring less knowledge on behalf of the user. I think the idea here is we want to dumb down the human race as much as possible. And if we can revert back to cavemen-like mental status that we rely on machines to tell us everything, that will make taking power easier. People won't know how to fight back. Also, it increases dependence on the government and dependence on others because people are inherently lazy. So if they don't have to learn something, they consider learning a burden, whereas learning should be considered one of the treasures and joys of life itself. And unfortunately, we have a large cultural change in a younger generation that thinks learning and reading is a waste of time when you've got a phone in your pocket that can do it all for you. You'd be stupid to want to be smart. I hope their children go the opposite way, but if this is a trend that can continue, we might represent the penultimate of human knowledge as individuals, as the generations that come after us only learn how to use the technology, but don't have any other knowledge of self-reliance regarding the natural nature process of living that every animal has to abide by or die an early death. So I don't know. It's just an observation, but it scares me to think of the reliance people put on technology, knowing how unreliable and untrustworthy it is. We're just waiting for the updates to finish here, and we'll reboot one more time. And I can put the Samsung Magician software on. I'll put VLC on it as always, and then it can be installed in the case. The problem is we're going to run out of time here. Usually these computer builds are going to be two parts. I think you'll find that's been a pattern here for some time. The first part is prepping the board. I was a bit naive and optimistic in thinking this board's already prepped, so I could get both the board prepped, or rather in this case updated, and then placed into the case in one regular 2-hour video. Clearly it's been 2 hours and we're not even at the case yet, which was the same as a brand new build from the last 2 Friday shows. Because the system had sat for so long, even though we did not have to install the CPU, the RAM, or storage, those things only take seconds. It's the cooler install that takes time. It's the operating system and updates that take time. The BIOS update takes time. And as a result, we've burned out the 2 hours of today's show. Same as we did 2 weeks ago. And much like we did last week, we picked up with part 2. We will pick up with part 2 this coming Friday, where we will actually review the case that this video is supposed to be about, which is, of course, the Musetex K2 or Musetex Case 2, K2 case. With this board now prepped, it should be another 2-hour video easily for getting the case, getting the motherboard installed in the case, getting the power supply installed in the case. The power supply we're going to use is a Be Quiet Straight Power 12. That's a 750 watt power supply. Be Quiet sent it to us for review. I haven't had anything to use it in, so I try and take a lot of the review units that, if Be Quiet sends me a power supply, for example, I need to come up with a motherboard, CPU, RAM, storage, and case to test it in. If I get sent a case, I need to come up with a power supply, a motherboard, a RAM, CPU, test it in. So because Musetex sent us the case and Be Quiet sent us the power supply, they need each other, right? And we'll provide the motherboard, the CPU, the RAM, the storage, the cooler, because we don't have any of those things available to review. So we just go out and buy them using the funds generated here at YouTube and your contributions. And that's why these videos can happen, because as you can imagine, this whole thing adds up to be about $1,000. And anytime we can repurpose some old parts and save some money, the process and the educational value is not lost. It's still the same, regardless if this was a 14th gen chip or a 9th gen or a 7th gen. It's all the same. Nothing's changed. The install's the same. The coolers we're using are the same. The storage we're using. Sure, we go from Gen 4 to Gen 5 and NVMe and DDR4 to DDR5, but it's all the same, basically, as far as any educational content to teach you how to do it this way with this part and that way with the other part. It's all done the same regardless. In fact, if you look at DDR4 and you look at DDR5, visually, to the naked untrained eye, they look exactly the same. You have to know what to look for. And a Gen 3, Gen 4, Gen 5 NVMe drive looks exactly the same to the untrained eye as well. So for those with the untrained eye, they're not even going to notice a difference anyway. The other thing we can do next Friday is we can actually test this cooler. I think that's the last thing we really need to do, is to verify if this cooler is going to be adequate for the 10850K. So very quickly, just because I'm super curious, let's just quickly throw Cinebench R23 on here, because if it's going to overheat, it'll do it in the first minute of the first test. And I don't need to take it any further, and that way we're not going to run too long today. So if I go to my flash drive here and copy over Let's go to PC testing software, and we're going to grab HWI for monitoring. I'm going to go ahead and move over Crystal Disk Mark Portable for later. Cinebench R23 is what we need now. I'm going to go ahead and move over CPU-Z as well. Just, I don't think I need it anymore, but it's a small thing. It's, since I've got the flash drive installed, let's move over the Samsung Magician software. Let's move over VLC, install that later. And let's move over Uncle Carey's Windows 10 Optimizer, and I'll run that later as well. So I can try and have this as ready as possible for next week's completion. So let's start with, well, first of all, let's take the flash drive. Let's start with HWI, that's our temperature monitoring. And let's see where we're at idle. Sensors only is what I want. Close that. And CPU temperatures. Be down here. Okay, so these are our peak temperatures since we started the software here of the cores. It's getting pretty warm already. It is a 10850K, which isn't exactly known for being cool. Let me move that over here. Oh, it won't let me. Good enough. And just for grins, let's take a look at what torture Cinebench will put this through in the first minute of the first test, or hitting 100 degrees Celsius. Let's see which one happens first. So I'm going to hit start on the first test. And let's see what our temps look like here. We want to watch this row, this far right maximum. I can hear the fan cranking up. It's getting hot. And I'm going to have to walk closer to the monitor. The numbers are too small for me to read at a distance. And it really bothers me when the mouse does that, when it overrides the data with some pop-up. So I got to move the mouse out of my way. All right, let's try that again. Let me walk back over. And, you know, temps look really good. 74C maximum is fantastic. And you've seen on other builds where we've already hit 100 degrees C on machines that don't have adequate cooling for this level of resource intensity over this period of time. So we've almost gone the full minute. We're about 5 seconds away. We've reached a max 77C. And that's likely the pinnacle, because right now on the far left, our current temps are lower into the 20s and 30s, which is extraordinarily chilly. That's extraordinary for that to be that low. So the highlighted in orange is our current. That's what's happening right now. And that row almost to the end, the maximum row, is what we've hit maximum. So just out of curiosity, let's go ahead and stop this test and let's start the single core just to see if that tortures it and changes the results at all. Oops, where's my, there it is. Again, with Cinebench R23, you're going to see those max temps right in that first minute. So it's only been 20 seconds since we started the test. And it really depends on what the test is doing. So the reason these temperatures fluctuate is that Cinebench is placing different demands on the CPU depending on where it is in its process. So these demands are not constant. There's a momentary, it's like driving a car. You're not going to put your foot all the way down to the floor, except under momentary circumstances of passing somebody, or you want to have a little thrill, but you're not going to keep your foot down on the floor for very long. If you did, your engine might overheat. But that's the way the Intel and AMD CPUs are designed to run. So we're looking at a maximum 77 degrees. We're already over a minute. This cooler is more than adequate. I can tell you that right now. We're not going to have any cooling issues at all. So I can safely move forward with putting this motherboard into the Musetex K2 case and not worry about any heat-related problems, because if it was going to happen, it would have happened. Again, within that first minute is when we typically see it. So we're going to stop that and close and close and close. And before we wrap up, let's run Crystal Disk Mark. This should be a Gen 3 drive because Gen 4 did not exist when these parts were made. So we should see about 3,600 maximum on our reads, somewhere around 3,000 or 2,800 on the writes. And as long as we're in that ballpark, I'm a happy camper. The Samsung Magician software is there as an added benefit. Not something you absolutely have to have, but it's free and I recommend it because it's nice to have. Make sure that your drive is operating correctly, that it's a genuine Samsung and not some fake knockoff. It verifies that. It also lets you know if there's a firmware update available, which are usually critical to the reliability and consistency of the data integrity, by always making sure you have a firmware, the latest firmware installed, just like I always make sure I have the latest BIOS installed. And so while the test runs, let me just say thank you again to all of the members joining me today. I can't thank you enough for your support and contribution to the channel here. And to the viewers who watch for free, we appreciate you watching for free, and we appreciate you understanding that any interaction during a live video is restricted to members only as a benefit of membership. $10 from Jason H88 in Super Chat. He says, hey, Carey, if the internet goes fully AI and becomes untrustable, I will only come to your channel because I know you're the real deal. Well, I appreciate that, but understand that it would be possible to generate an AI Carey that would be almost impossible to tell from the real Carey. At this point, I'm not exactly sure what safeguards we're going to have in place to know. I mean, how many times have they done that in sci-fi movies where, you know, there's somebody holding a gun and then there's the real person and the clone, and they're both saying, don't shoot me, shoot him, he's the clone. And the clone says, no, I'm not the clone, he's the clone, shoot him. That's what's going to happen. There's got to be some form of authentication that occurs, which hasn't, as far as I know, been developed yet. But I think that's where we're heading. But just because you see me doesn't mean you're really seeing me. I could be AI right now. We could all be AI right now. There's a rabbit hole. Mark Gaines with 10 pounds says he got it all sorted. Carey, he ordered 2 packs of those USB flash drives. Yeah, they're handy. Again, they're just USB 2. They're fantastic for boot drives, test drives, BIOS flash drives. And, you know, if they break, you throw them away. They're not even worth warrantying. Paul Gray with a $50 Australian Super Chat contribution. Thank you for all your contributions today, Paul. And let me take a quick look at the phone. I've not been paying attention much. So shout out to let's see. Oh, those are just, so we have a message here, a tech support message, which I'll respond to. I don't think I've missed anything else, which is nice and quiet. And let me go back over to the, yeah, see, so I'm looking at my results here, and my write speed's a bit higher than I expected, and my read speed's a little bit lower, but they offset one another, so we're in that ballpark I'm talking about, that I know that things are running optimally. So perfect. This is definitely ready for next Friday's part 2, where we'll put the board into the case and evaluate that case. What was I doing? Oh, I want to say thank you again to the contributors during today's video who are already paying members. So on top of being paying members, many of them have contributed. So a super shout out and thank you to Jeremy Kramer and Bebo, as well as Nick Caffrey, David Graham, William Denton, thank you for your continued support, William. Paul Gray with the numerous super chats today, as well as Mark Gaines and Frankie, our good friend Frankie B, of course. Jose Lopez with his super chats today. Thank you for that. Paul1961 and Gregory Howard. Thank you also to Richard Palmentier and Charles Purdy. And again, several more from Paul Gray today. Really appreciate your generosity, Paul. And again, from Mark Gaines and Jason H88. And for every member who's renewed or become a member, thank you for renewing and supporting. Matthew Burden, thank you. As well as Wesley L95. Welcome into the, oh, not welcome in, he's a member for 25 months. What am I talking about? David Moore is a new member. Well, but it also has a 12 by his name, so that's not confusing at all. Thank you, David. 3D Everything renews its membership, as well as Live Windows Training with Doug Betts, who's also a member for 26 months. Our friend Doug. Be sure and check out Doug's channel, Live Windows Training with Doug Betts. He does all live support videos. Thank you to Barry Klein for renewing his membership. And Elaj Depeche renewing his membership. Gary Tatum renews membership. Michael MacArthur and Samuel Kowalski renewing their membership, as did Paul 1980s and Paul Gray. Thank you to Dwayne Blackwelder for renewing his membership. And Patrick Manny. A lot of membership renewals today, right on. Thank you, of course, to Marlena for all the work she does behind the scenes. And our friends over at Acronis and RoboForm. Acronis is backup and imaging software. I hope you're backing your computer up, or you don't care if you lose everything. One or the other. If you are not backing up, or your backup process is discouraging, consider Acronis. There's a 30% discount for all of our viewers for Acronis software, and it's available till the end of the year, so there's no pressure for you to rush out and buy it today. There's a free trial for you to download it and test it, see if you like it. We also have walkthrough videos on how to install and use it from our friend Begowden over at Acronis. And we'll bring Begowden out again here very soon so we can continue to explore all the varying ways to use Acronis, besides mostly the basics is what we've been showing. Our friends at RoboForm, that's password management software. And if you've never used password management software, you're going to wonder how you've ever lived without it. I've been using RoboForm for nearly 2 decades. Nothing else competes or compares. It's extraordinarily reliable. They've never had a database breach. They've never caused a computer crash with an update. Never, ever, ever. And yet they're often blacklisted off password manager reviews, which I don't think is fair. I think they're the OG of password managers, and they're the best. They're also the best deal because you get 30% off with our coupon code. And those links are in the video notes below the video. The coupon code for RoboForm is for new customers only. Finally, we have our friends at VIP CDK Deals that offer discounts on genuine, legitimate Windows and Microsoft Office product keys. They're exclusively all I've been using for years. They're extraordinarily reliable. We've had some people who have become victims of product key theft. And unfortunately, there's not much anybody can do. Like if you went to Best Buy and you bought a television, and then 6 months later, someone steals your TV. So you go back to Best Buy and say, hey, I want another television. Someone stole mine. Best Buy's like, you're going to have to buy a new one. I've seen a little bit of that with stolen product keys where people want to go back to VIP CDK Deals and they think they're going to get a free key. Key's been working fine for 6 months. All of a sudden doesn't work. That's likely because someone stole your key and reactivated it. In most cases, the keys can only be activated once. But after a certain period of time, you might be able to reactivate it. And that may deactivate the prior time it was activated. It's unfortunate when it happens, but thankfully the keys are cheap enough. You buy another one for $15 or $16. It's not a big deal. It cost me twice that to eat at Arby's. So, or at least if Mitch and I go to Arby's, it costs more than twice that. And it cost me more than that to eat at Five Guys. Just me alone is like $24. Anyway, the point is it's very inexpensive. It's very affordable. The product keys are guaranteed to work. and you have a 30-day promise on that. So if you go beyond 30 days before you use it, or you have a problem where it was working, but 30 days later it doesn't, I'm not saying they're not going to help you, but at that point it looks like you're trying to be a scammer, right? It's very suspicious for somebody to come back. It's not normal, but they have excellent customer service. And if you were to buy a product key and for any reason had any problems with it, they are guaranteed going to take care of you in those first 30 days. No different than Best Buy. If you buy the TV at Best Buy and you leave it in the garage for 6 weeks before you open it up and take it out of the box and realize your screen is cracked and you didn't do it, you had a 30-day return period. It doesn't matter what the excuse is, why you exceeded the 30 days. It's in writing. It's on the receipt. It's not their fault that you waited to open it. When I worked at Best Buy, we heard this, and we don't know how many people are scammers, and are lying to us, and how many people just have bad luck or bad decision making for buying something that expensive and then waiting that long to check it for damage. The more expensive something is, even if you don't have time to hook it up, at least look for any obvious damage so you're within your return period if necessary for anything you buy from anywhere, at least here in the United States. And that includes Amazon. I have something to return to Amazon. I have 2 days left on my return window. That's not Amazon's fault. This is something I thought I needed for Studio C and then didn't get around to it, and now realize I don't need it. And it's taken me nearly the entire 30 days to figure that out. So what that tells me is I should have waited to order it. And I likely would have never ordered it to begin with once I got to that point at Studio C's renovations, that I realized this isn't going to work. I was trying to be prepared and ultimately made it harder on myself because, not only did I spend money I didn't need to spend, but now I got to return something back and wait for my refund, which just is more to do. But I got myself to blame. But at least I figured it out within the 30 days. Even if we're that close, I think I have till Monday to get it back to the UPS store. So guess what I'm doing after this video is over? Get that done and off the list. All right. Thank you again, everybody in the chat, for making this channel what it is today. And we look forward to seeing you again on Monday. We do members only Monday. So here's the difference for people that are confused. Members only videos are done every Monday at 1 o'clock Pacific time, and the public cannot watch those videos ever. Only members. And members can go back and watch previous videos that we've done for members only. That being said, the general public cannot interact with me live unless they're a member, because there's too many bots, spammers, trolls, and bullies looking to seek attention. They're just sad, lonely people. And unfortunately, there's no end to them. If one finally matures and grows up or gets the help they need, they're replaced by 2 more. And around the wheel goes. And this is making it very discouraging to interact live with the audience. So my options are to disable live interaction the way most what other YouTube channel interacts with their audience live? Doug Betts does it, but I'm saying there aren't many. And this is why. When we have supporters of the channel that are paying members, we know they're here for the right reason. They're not here to disrupt. And I believe that should be a benefit of membership. And that also helps keep the show moving along in the right tone. And I think you've witnessed that in today's show, right? I didn't get upset by somebody disrespecting me or trying to change the subject into something to make it about them. So that makes it more enjoyable for me as a creator to want to interact with the audience. And I do, because I know everybody's here for the right reason. Think about it this way. A public school teacher has to teach students that don't want to be there. But a college professor doesn't care if you want to be there or not. You paid for that. So if you want to show up, show up. And if you don't, don't. College professor doesn't care. You're there because you want to be there or don't. Either way, you're paying for it. Public school teacher, students have to be there. They must be there. They don't want to be there. They got a bad attitude. So the public school teacher is a bit of a babysitter. I want to be the college professor, not the public school teacher. And this is not a ding to public school teachers. If anything, this is to credit them for just how difficult their job is.
to be told you've got to teach students who don't want to learn, who don't want to be there, and will disrupt because they don't care. That's a very difficult job to do. I don't want to do that job. I want to do the other job at the college where your students have all paid to be there. So it's kind of similar to that with the interaction with members, if it helps you to understand the logic behind it. That'll wrap it up for me for today. And again, thank you to all of you. I look forward to seeing you again on Monday. Will there be a video tomorrow? Maybe. I don't know yet. We still have a lot of backlog to get caught up with. So, but there's also a lot of work to do at Studio C. And I'd like to get in there sooner rather than later. So we'll see how it works out. But definitely every Friday at 1 o'clock, we're live to the public. And every Monday at 1 o'clock, we are live to members only. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Once again, a shout out and happy birthday to our friend Forrest. Until next time, bye for now. Got the wrong mouse.